In this final section, I wanted to talk briefly about talk therapy, the challenges that come from engaging in talk therapy, and what would be helpful to us if we want to move in that direction. What does it mean to have a good enough therapist? What kind of qualities do they bring to the table for us to help us navigate and discover our next steps? So let's talk really about why I think traditional therapy can hurt us. And traditional therapy to me is talk therapy. There are great therapists out there. There are people who have trauma that have had incredible relationships with good enough therapists that have been able to help them connect the dots that they need to and reconnect the dots so that they could start living their own authentic self. So let's see what the qualities would be to me of an unsafe therapeutic relationship. And I will also say that these therapists are unintentionally recreating trauma. I don't think that they're coming at us to try to do it, although that's oftentimes how we tend to feel. When you look at a therapist, they're trained to be behavior police, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but that is truly, they're trained to figure out what's right and what's wrong with us. They are trained to pathologize and categorize and label us. That is part of their job. They're taught to figure out what's wrong with you, what's wrong with me, versus really diving in first and saying, what happened to you to create these coping mechanisms that are destroying your life? And lastly, it's an expert model. It's an expert model outside of ourselves, which I think is probably the most damaging thing that we can do to ourselves as trauma survivors, because we are the experts on self. We just need a good enough expert in a good enough therapeutic relationship to help us rediscover that and identify what we can do to start creating healthy coping mechanisms. So, moving forward, looking at my notes here, unsafe therapeutic relationships don't understand trauma mechanisms. So, talking literally can strengthen the synaptic wiring. We talk about it, we revisit it, it's up in our body. So, literally, something that happened to me in 20 years ago, 30 years ago, last week, it will come right back up into my physiological space. Now I am strengthening that synaptic wiring because of the physiology. I'll sweat, I'll shake, my voice will crack. All of these things are coming back. So that's one reason I really believe that talking may not be the first and smartest way to go about dealing with our trauma. Our bodies go into that physiological thing. We cannot think ourselves out of this. We are in a feeling motion. That's when the logic goes out of the door because we're trying to survive. Qualities of a good enough therapist, they will make it safe for a client to remember trauma so that they don't get re-traumatized. And there are many ways that a trained, effective, good enough therapist can go about that. They also have to be able to tolerate your discomfort and your processing. And that's not an easy thing to do because it may trigger their own stuff. And that's just a human condition. It doesn't mean they're wrong. It doesn't mean they're bad. It just means that in this good enough relationship, it's good to be aware of what the other needs. The other thing is they're comfortable discussing their own limitations and their own concerns with you in a way that is supportive of you. I really think this is when we're starting to practice being in these adult relationships. And this is a good enough, safe enough relationship where we start learning how to have these conversations of our discomfort and owning where we are in our processes. They also need to really be good at somatic and expressive arts. They need to understand the power of moving our bodies and bringing out these unconscious and neurological and physiological things that are in our system so that we can investigate them in a different way other than just talking. One of the most powerful things that it's on the forefront right now is neurofeedback. So neurofeedback can be something that could, with the right therapist or the right trained neurofeedback therapists help us start looking at what's happening in our own reactions. EMDR, again, that eye movement desensitization. I've tried it. I've not been with the right therapist, and I've been looping for days afterwards. So it's important. I know some people have had incredible results with it. Same with EFT, emotional freedom, and the tapping, or bilateral tapping. These are a lot of things that they're starting to find are helping us move and process specific things through our body. Movement, dance, also theater. Theater gives us a safe place to practice being someone else, to practice having different points of view, to practice feelings. And so they're finding a lot of efficacy with that. Feeling safe with a therapist is not a prerequisite for therapy. It's simply a result of good therapy. So I know this is a lot of information to kind of take in. Again, I really think these were 3 of the key areas that were incredibly important for me in understanding how to give myself relief, let myself off the hook, and just take a breath and say, oh my gosh, I'm not broken. I just have coping mechanisms that are not serving me. My responses are on overload. My brain's on fire. All of these kinds of things helped me step back and go, okay, so now what do I have to do? What do I have to investigate? And what do I have to figure out for myself with good enough people in my life to start rebuilding, or actually building, new responses, new options, and new coping mechanisms. So trying to find relief within a broken system. Recognize that a lot of our systems are broken. I'm not crazy. I am coping. I hope you'll find the best solutions you can find to regain your autonomy. And join me along the way. If there's other things that you really want to know about, really want us to talk about, want to practice, people you want to hear from, let me know. Let's bring these things together so we can start changing the context and conversations around trauma and become experts on ourselves. The insights I shared with you today are definitely not meant to create excuses for why you and I are the way we are, or were. Instead, it's to grant you awareness so that you can start becoming really conscious about your individual healing choices and responsibilities. So, thank you, bless you, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Definitely go to the website. I'll put a link in as well so that you can sign up and be on the email list. So as I'm creating other trainings or other videos are released or other information that's available, that you'll have access to it so you can continue investigating, educating yourself, and practicing your new way of being. So much appreciation. Thanks for being here. Like I said, the gratitude is really great, and we're on our way.